My story begins about 14 years back. I was cruising down this maze called life, thinking to myself, I've made it. I had conquered the great Indian dream. And we all know what that is, finding a way to get out of India. Right? So back then, I was working in the UK, and I was just offered a new role. And this new role came with a 2-bedroom apartment. Fortunately, I was also madly, deeply, truly in love with this gorgeous lady. She's pretty, isn't she? Yeah? So, say yes, guys. Come on, show me some love. Yeah? So, new role, 2-bedroom apartment. I was like, crazy idea. Why don't we get married? We were very young. Marriage was not on the radar at all, but love makes you do crazy things, isn't it? So, 2 months later, we were on a plane to India, all set for a big fat Indian wedding. But life is never that simple. 4 days before our wedding, I got a call from my manager, and he said, hey, Satish, something went wrong. Your work come through, so you can't come back to the UK. So there I was on the wedding day. I was sitting at the altar waiting for my beautiful bride to come in. And it suddenly occurred to me that I'm getting married. Holy cow, I'm getting married. I have no job, I have no money, I have no place to live, and I'm getting married. Yeah? And there's like this massive panic attack setting in, and they start playing the music. I turn around and I see Jenny walking down the aisle with this biggest smile ever. And in that moment, I knew no matter what challenges the life throws at us, as long as we are together, we will make it. 1 month after the wedding, I had a decision to make. I had an option of taking up a job, a nice, comfortable job, and settling down, or an option of moving to a strange city called Bangalore and running a socially driven enterprise. The thing is, when you're young, you're naive and you're stupid. You think you can change the world single-handedly. So I took that brave decision. I moved to Bangalore to change the world single-handedly. It took me about a month to realize that I wasn't changing anyone's world. I was stuck in a survival mode. My life revolved around client meetings, deadlines, and targets. What followed was years of frustration and guilt. I was stuck in a maze, running like a headless chicken, not knowing what to do. But if there's one thing I learned as a recruiter, it's this. We live in a country, great divide. There are haves and there are have-nots. The story of India is not a story of slumdog millionaires. It's a story of slumdogs and millionaires. I say it because, as a recruiter, I had two types of job seekers walk into my office. Type 1, they had like 4 job offers, but they came to me asking for a better offer. They obviously went to good private schools, could speak flawless English, very tech-savvy, could pay 650 rupees and attend a TED Talk. Yeah? Type 2 were the ones who were desperate for a job. Though equally talented, they didn't have good education to back them up. They didn't have basic skills like being able to speak English or to use a computer. They wanted jobs, but I had nothing to offer them. And it seemed extremely unfair. Obviously, the missing link was good education. That's what they needed. And they were the real victims of the education crisis that we talk about, not us, they. Let me explain you what I mean by educational crisis. These kids, the schools they go to, they don't learn English at all. In fact, a majority of them come out of schools knowing 0% of English, in terms of speaking or writing. And when you look at the job market and look at the private sector, 100% of jobs require you to speak English, read English, and write English. So these kids have no chance at all. And why would we do this to them? Not give them the basic critical skill they need to succeed in life. Not only that, the quality of education they receive is way below the bar. Just look at this stat. About 52% of fifth grade students cannot read second grade textbooks. That's the quality of education that they receive. And because they are the first generation learners, they struggle at school, and when they go home, they've got nobody else to help them, unlike us. Yeah? And only 14% of these kids have access to a paid tutor. So they've got literally no hope. And because they are the first generation learners and they live in communities where people have either dropped out of school or not gone to school, they lack role models when it comes to education, somebody to inspire them and to mentor them to excel in studies. So it's no wonder that though India claims that 96% of the children today enroll in primary schools, not only, but about 70 to 90% of these kids never reach 10th grade. Yeah? So the worst case scenario is 9 out of 10 kids who go to government schools will and do drop out before they reach 10th. Can you comprehend that? Imagine 90% of your classmates, your college mates dropping out before you finish college. That's a serious problem. So faced with this educational crisis, we asked ourselves, what can we do? We have all asked that question at some point or the other, right? Perhaps every time you see a kid begging at a traffic signal, we ask, what can I do? For us, the answer was right in front of us. We had this fancy office with laptops and computers, and after 6 p.m. it was empty. So we said, hey, why don't we open our office, invite some kids from a nearby community, and teach them basic English and computers. So we did that. And what started with about 15 kids and just a bunch of friends teaching them kept growing. 15 kids became 30, 30 became 40, 50, 80, 100. It came to a point where Ajit, the other co-founder of UNI, and I were like, man, we got to do something. Looks like we have to start a real charity. Yeah? And obviously, to start a charity, one thing you need is the name, right? You can't start a charity without a name. So we thought of all these fancy names. And in the end, we decided we should just call ourselves UNI. Because what we do, our story is literally about you and I. It's about you and I being the change. It's about you and I getting our hands dirty. It's about you and I believing that we can change the world. So, what started as just a bunch of friends has literally turned into a movement today. That has spread to about 10 cities. Yeah, with about 21 learning centers, we teach about 850 kids, going from teaching 15 kids to 850 kids, and going from a bunch of friends to 1,000 active volunteers who turn up every single week to teach these kids. But it's not just about the growth, it's about impact. And thanks to the exceptional volunteers we have seen some extraordinary results. For the last 3 years, all the 10th graders that we have taught have passed with more than 70%. And if you look at our programs, both English and tutoring, our passing ratio is about 100%. Here are some of the girls that we teach. These girls, all of them have come out of very terrible situations. They live in a shelter home run by this amazing lady called Aunt Beulah. Aunt Beulah runs a home for these girls, and I remember the day we took this picture. I was standing beside her for a very long time, and she started telling me their stories and where they've come from. She said, the girl you see in front, a little girl in blue dress, her name is Selvi. When Selvi was born, her mother was a 12-year-old rag picker. 12-year-old rag picker living on the streets. If you look at the back section, you'll see Karishma. You know Karishma? Her mother was a sex worker in Mumbai, and she had decided to sell Karishma also to a pimp. But fortunately, Karishma was rescued. If you look in front, in the yellow dress is Aishwarya. She was found on a footpath with her skull literally open because she was beaten up by her family for refusing to work as a maid. And thanks to Aunt Beulah, these kids have not just a safe home, but a shot at a great future. And then Auntie started telling me about how they're doing in school. She said, you know what, Selvi? She got 80% last time. You know, Karishma, she got 80%. You know, Aishwarya, she got more than 80%. And then she said this. She said, and because they've done so well, they're not going to government school this year. They're going to an international school. And this has been possible because of work you and I volunteers have done by mentoring and teaching these kids over the years. I know that life throws enough challenges at us to keep us busy and self-involved, and it's a life of me, me, and me. You know, there are days you get up, you don't want to think about anything else but yourself. I know that very well. I know the feeling. I have 5 of those days every week. I remember one of those mornings, I didn't want to get out of my bed. And I was like, I don't care. I really don't care. But I had an early meeting with the social worker, so I had to get out of the house and go and meet her. So I very reluctantly went and met her. You know, sitting in a meeting, everyone was talking about change and speaking very passionately. And I was sitting there saying, whatever, let's get on, blah, blah, blah. Then the social worker starts telling me about this 9-year-old girl from West Bengal that her team had recently rescued. And this is her story. A 9-year-old girl from West Bengal. She didn't have a mother. Her dad was paralyzed. She had two younger siblings. And a friend's neighbor, somebody comes home, we have heard this many times, and tells her dad, you know what, why don't you send her to Bangalore? I will get her a nice job as a maid. She'll be able to earn a lot of money and send money back home. You know, dad, out of desperation, thinks it's a good idea and sends her. He takes her, obviously, they get into a train, it's a 30-hour journey, and 30 hours she's sitting in his lap. And his hands are all over her body. He brings her to Bangalore and makes her live with him, his wife, and his children. And every night he wakes her up and rapes her. She's a 9-year-old kid. If she doesn't cooperate, she gets beaten up by him. She doesn't know what to do. Eventually, she decides to tell the wife, and the wife beats her up as well. Fortunately, the social worker comes to know about the situation and rescues this girl and puts her in a home. And then the social worker told me which shelter home this girl is living in. And when I heard the name, it was as if somebody punched me in my face, because I realized we work with that shelter home. And that 9-year-old girl from West Bengal is one of the 850 kids that we teach. And I was sitting there thinking about my selfishness and my attitude of whatever, I don't care. I told myself that day, as long as kids like this are out there, our job is not done. It's not an option to be a change. We got to be the change. Country needs us. These kids need us. You know, there is an Irish story about this guy who died and went to heaven. Yeah, and he was greeted by St. Peter at the gates. And he said, hi, can I get in? St. Peter said, of course, but first let me see your scars. Guy was confused. He said, what scars? I have no scars. And St. Peter said, what a pity. What a pity. In all your life, you found nothing worth fighting for. In all honesty, my hope today is that today you find something worth fighting for. That you have that gift of faith and foolishness to believe that you can change the world. Thank you.